Hello everyone and welcome to the Kiki London YouTube channel. My name's Amanda and in today's video I have a very exciting brand new launch to share with you all, as today Kiki London add to their pro range brush collection with not one but two brand new brushes. So let's open them up and take a look together. As always, the brushes will come securely packaged and here they are. So here we have two new watercolor brushes. We have 01 Watercolour and 02. As you can see, they have the very same design as the previous Kiki London brushes, so they are all part of the same range. They've got that beautiful sleek slim matte black aesthetic, which I absolutely love. Just look how gorgeous they look. So we are going to take a closer look at them. We're going to look at the bristles and of course we are going to do a demo. I just wanted to show you guys what the packaging kind of looked like. So here we have 01 and 02. Let's open them up and take a look inside. So starting off with 01, this is the shorter of the two, and as you can see, it's got a nice kind of like a quite a round belly to the brush, and then it goes to a nice point. So this is great for more detailed work. So let's pop that one down and take a look at 02. 02 has a very similar shape to it, but it's a lot longer. It's still got that nice round belly, so it's going to hold the water nicely for your watercoloring, but then it comes out slightly longer, as you can see here. So they are both must-haves for any kind of watercolor design. I did also really quickly want to mention that the bristles are very soft. They're high quality, and the same as all of the other Kiki London brushes, they are made from vegan friendly bristles, as they are synthetic fibers. So like I said, exactly the same when it comes to quality wise to the rest of the brushes in the pro range. If you haven't checked out the previous brushes that have launched from Kiki London, I will leave them linked in the description box below, as they are my go-tos. So let's jump in and try these out. I'm starting off with 2 coats of coconut for my first design, curing each coat for 30 seconds. Of course, if you were working on a client, you would do all of your prep and base coat to begin with, but we are just going to do display tips for the demo of the brushes. So I've popped both of my coats of colour in to cure for 30 seconds, and then over the top of our colour, we're going to come in with the no wipe matte top coat. This is quite an important step I found when working with watercolour. You need to apply your watercolor down onto a matte surface. It runs around way too much on a glossy surface, so it is essential to have your matte top coat. So this is what coconut looks like once we have got our matte top coat. And then I'm going to set up and get ready for the watercoloring. So we're going to be using both the brushes in this demonstration, but I'm going to start off with 02 because it's the larger of the two brushes, so I found that it held more water. And I'm going to start off by just popping a drop of water into all of the colours that I planned on using. I wasn't sure if I was going to use all of them. They were kind of just what I pulled out for the design. So I thought let's just pop some water down on them, as it's going to start, you know, softening the paint. Now to begin with, I'm going to say I hadn't actually done any watercoloring, painting on nails anyway, since I hadn't ever done any watercoloring on nails. And then Kiki launched the brushes, so since I've received the brushes, I've had a play around. They were so much fun. So I'm not an expert, but I had a lot of fun playing around with them, and they are definitely going to be something I'm going to be using a lot more of. Now I didn't have any actual nail art watercolor paints. I do hope this is something we will see from Kiki in the future, so I'm actually just using some craft ones that I ordered, and I didn't realize that when I'd ordered them they were all metallic, but I did quite like the effect that the metallic ones give off. But I'm definitely going to order some more solid colors so that we can play around and do some designs, because I think the watercoloring is going to be brilliant for winter nail art, which is kind of what we're going to be doing on our first design. So as you can see, I'm using the larger brush because, like I said, the larger one holds a lot more water, so you are going to create a more wet look with your watercolors. It's going to be that more translucent effect. And then I found the shorter one a lot more dense, so I'll be showing you guys when I chose to use each brush. So what I'm doing to begin with is just picking up a little bit of each of that color and adding it on to my Kiki London palette, and a little bit goes a long way. You don't want to be adding in too much water, so you can see I'm only adding a little bit of that paint and water mix to my palette, just so we haven't got too much. And you can see I'm wiping off my brush brush a lot on a paper towel. This is so that I'm not adding too much water to the nail. Something to bear in mind is the more wet or more watery the paint is, the less pigmented it is. So if you want to have a slightly more pigmented look, then use less water. And what I wanted to create on this now was a bit of a wintry, snowy sky scene. So I've come in with the darker blue and then the silver, and then that more silvery purple shade, and I'm kind of just blending those three together, which was something that worked really well with the watercolor designs, especially when using the larger 02 watercolor brush, because it holds that more water in there. You're able to blend the colors together. Now this, obviously, like I said, this is quite a new technique to me, so although I'd had a play around off camera a couple of times before doing the video, everything was a little bit of an experiment, but it was really fun to do. So if you are already experienced in watercolor nail art, pop some tips in the comments below and let's all help each other out. If you are new to watercolor, then let's have some fun and learn together. So this is my base for my design, and then what I'm going to do is I allowed this to dry and then I come in and matte top coated. Now I was a little bit impatient here and I didn't fully allow this to dry, but it didn't matter too much because most of it had dried. But that was something I really wanted to mention. You do need to make sure that your watercolor has dried before you come in and add any top coat or the next part of your design. Now it doesn't actually take too long for the watercolor to dry. Just on this first nail I was being a little bit impatient. The watercolor does dry down quite quickly. Obviously it's going to depend on the watercolors you're using, so have some fun and play around and do find what works best for you. But I found if I didn't use too much water, it did dry quite quickly, and I just lightly tapped it with a piece of paper towel, or you could use a lint-free pad just to make sure it was dry. And you can also dab over if you've got any excess water on your design. Now I wanted to mention, always top coat your watercolor once it has dried before you move on to the next part of your design. So for example, if you're coming in like I did here and add stamping over the top, you would have seen that I matte top coated first and then did my stamping. This is just to make sure that you're sealing in and protecting your watercolor design before you come in and add your next layer. This way, if you make any mistakes on your next layer, whether it be with your stamping, decals or hand painting, you can wipe that off without wiping off the watercolor. And then lastly, we're going to come in and top coat this design with the Kiki London Hema Free No Wipe top coat, just to bring everything back to being that pretty glossiness, and of course to seal in the stamping. So I'm just going to come in with a thin coat of this and pop this in to cure for 60 seconds, and then we can take a look at the finished result. I have to say I really loved how this nail and the next nail turned out. I thought they just looked beautiful. I would 100% wear this in a set of nails, and it was that watercolor background that really just took this design up a level, because of course you could stamp this design down over a white base and it still be quite pretty, but having that watercolor in the background, it just, in my opinion, looked super pretty and give off that really cute wintry vibe. So the next thing I wanted to try, which is something I've actually wanted to do for years, I've just never reached for trying watercolors before, and that is coloring in your stamped images with watercolors. So if you're familiar with stamping, you'll know that a lot of the images are the kind of images you can color in, and a lot of people do it with reverse stamping. Of course you can do it with your gel polish, but both of those techniques are quite pigmented, so you lose some of the details in your stamped images. Now watercoloring, where it's quite soft and you can play around with it and you can make it a little bit more sheer, it's brilliant for coloring in your stamped designs. So same as on the first nail, I started off with 2 coats of coconut and then my matte top coat, and then we've stamped down these 2 wintry / Christmas trees, and then I'm going to come in with my matte top coat to seal in that stamping, just because I don't want any of the watercolor to break down my stamped image. Then we're going to swap to the 01 watercolor brush, because like I said in the start, this one is a lot more shorter and it's a little bit thinner, so it's a lot more easier to hold less water and create more smaller intricate nail art designs with. I think this will be great for doing like watercolor flowers and things with, which is definitely something I want to give a go, so maybe that will pop up in a future video very soon. So starting off, I'm just adding on 2 of the colors that I want to use, and then I'm cleaning my my brush up quite a lot throughout the watercolor designs, which you probably would have noticed on the first one. So I just dip it in to my water, rub it on my paper towel just to make sure that I'm removing excess water and any color that I don't want to take into this part of the design. And then first of all, we're going to go in with the lighter blue shade and just literally color in the Christmas tree. And this was so easy to do due to the size of this brush. I love that Kiki have brought out both a larger and smaller version of the watercolor brushes, just because it's great to have versatility when you're doing nail art designs. You're going to find that you reach for both larger and smaller brushes when you're doing these kind of designs. So as you can see, that was super simple to do, and due to the fact that watercolor is that little bit more sheer, you can still see all the little speckles that were on that stamped image because the watercolor paint hasn't fully covered up the black stamping polish. So again, here you can see I'm just cleaning up my brush, and then I'm going to take a little bit of silver and add that to my palette, and we had added some blue as well. And what I'm going to do here is I just want to create a little bit of a sky design. So I swapped back to the O2 brush, just because it's that little bit larger, and I don't want this to look too pigmented or too concentrated. I want it to look quite wishy-washy, quite soft and sheer, just to add a little bit of color, and then you can build up the color where it needs to be. So you can also layer with these as well, which is what we're going to do on the next design. But here what I'm doing, I'm just layering up two of the colors, but I want it to be quite sheer, have that really soft effect. So I'm just coming in, blending the two colors together, and obviously they're drying all the time, like it does dry fairly quickly. So then if you need to come over the top and add more color, you can. And if you're wanting to add a little bit more, like I wanted this layer to look a little bit darker, then just take less water on your brush. Then what we're going to do is I just noticed I didn't colour in the bottoms of my trees. So we're going to really quickly finish those off with a little bit of colour. And one of the main things to learn with, I think anyway, with the watercolour brushes is just learning how much water to have in your brush. They hold the water really well, so you don't actually need to have lots of water in your brush. But it is a little bit of an experiment at first to see how you want your watercolor designs to turn out, to bear in mind how much water you're going to need in your brush. Like I said before, if you're wanting quite a soft look, then you're going to want less paint and more water, and then if you're wanting a more dense pigmented look, then you're going to want less water and more paint. So just have a play around and bear that in mind. On to the next nail design, I have done 2 coats of ivory and matte top coated, and on these 2 nails I wanted to see if I could create a marble effect. So I've swapped out my colours, and I'm starting off by just wetting the colours that we're going to be using and adding these to my palette. I found this easier to do with the larger brush. So as you can see, I'm taking my water, adding it in directly on to the colour, and then we're moving that water and colour mix on to the palette. So what we're doing here is just getting ready the colours that we're going to use. I found it easier to have the colours ready on my palette than having to get them through the design. And you'll see here, when I went into that purple, I still had a lot of the copper on my brush where I hadn't cleaned it up well. So do make sure, especially if your colours are quite pigmented, to make sure you're really giving your brush a good clean before you go into your next colour. So starting off, we're going to take that O2 watercolour brush. Because it's larger, like I said, we can create a larger image with it as well, because it's going to hold more water, so naturally more colour and more water are going to go on to the nail. And then what I'm simply doing is taking those 3 colours and placing them down onto the nail, and I'm kind of just wriggling it across the nail because I know that the colours are going to blend and create a marble effect really easily. Then what I did was swapped to the O1 brush just so I could go in and very gently around the edges diffuse the colour out a little bit, just so it covers a little bit more of the nail. Same with using the O2 brush, you want to make sure that you're cleaning it up quite a lot. So just go into your water, wipe it on your paper towel, and then we're just very gently pulling the colours together. And I want to do 2 layers of this. So we're going to do this first layer on one nail, and then whilst that's drying, we're going to do the first layer on the second nail, so that then we can come in and do the second layer and create this kind of dimensional look to the nail design. I hope that makes sense, but you'll see as we're going. So what this also showed was it doesn't take too long to dry as well. Like the first nail dried whilst I was working on the second nail. So if you're working on clients, a lot of the time I'd imagine you'd be doing more than one nail with the watercolor, especially if you're working on two hands. So you can always just leave that nail to dry and go and work on the other hand or the other nail, and then sort of switch backwards and forwards, so you're not just sitting there waiting for your watercolor paints to dry. Another thing I wanted to mention is if you make a mistake with your watercolor design, say you just do the design and you don't like how it turns out, it wipes away super easy. I just took one of the Kiki London alcohol wipes, wiped over the whole nail, and it washed away the whole design. Now if you just want to take away a small part of the design, you can actually go in with your brush and a little bit of water, and the more water you add, it's going to take away the color from the paint. So that's handy as well if you just want to clean up a certain section on the nail. You probably would have seen me doing that when we're doing the marble. There's certain areas, I don't know if it's on the second layer on this one, where I just wanted to take a little bit away, so I just come in with a little bit more water on the brush. So this is what they looked like once they had dried. It's give off a really soft, sheer, marbly effect. And then what I'm going to do on the second layer is come in and add more color. So I'm not adding as much water. I'm sticking with that 01 brush here just because I want to have a smaller amount of water and color going onto the nail, but I'm not adding as much water in because I want to create that layered look. So over the top we're just going to be coming in with a more pigmented look, but we're not going to take that over the entire first layer of color that we're done. We're just going to come in here and there, and it's going to give us that really pretty dimensional look. So as you can see here, where I'm not using as much water on the brush, it's a lot more pigmented, it doesn't blend out as much, so it's really versatile with the colors and the brushes depending on the look that you want to create. I would highly recommend just sticking in watercolor nail art into Instagram or Pinterest or even Google, wherever you go to get your inspiration, and there are some incredible designs. Another thing is, if you are wanting to do designs with nail art inks but you don't have the inks, you can create very similar effects with watercolor colors as what nail art inks do as well. So I thought that was brilliant too, because it's a lot more of a budget friendly way of doing nail art designs rather than having to purchase a load of inks, because watercolor paints I found weren't actually that expensive either. So as you can see, we're just doing the same again. Whilst that first nail is drying, we're going to come in and do the same on the second nail. Now on all of these nails, you would have seen that I ended with a glossy top coat. You can of course finish with a matte or glossy look depending on what your preference is. No matter what top coat you work with over the top of your watercolor paints, application is always the same. So as long as you have allowed your watercolor to dry, you can just come in and top coat as you normally would. If you found that you've added too much water to your design, like I said, you can just blot some off using a paper towel. But if you feel as though this is going to take off too much water, what I found easier to do as well was to completely dry my 02 brush, completely dry it on a paper towel, and then use that brush to take out some of the water from the design, because the brush, if you press it down into the water, it's going to soak up the water, and then you can clean it off that way as well. So this is what they looked like once we'd added in that second layer of design, and I really loved how this looked, but I wanted to run some glitter through it. So I'm going to take rose gold from the Platinum collection, and I'm going to take my stripe liner brush, and we're just going to run this through the marble. So whenever I'm running a glitter through a marble, what I like to do is kind of just try and pick out some areas where you can run that glitter through and it's going to complement the marble, but it's not going to cover up any areas that you really like the look of. No matter what way you do a marble design, there will be certain areas that you just like more than others, maybe where the colors blended nicely or it's just created a perfect marble look. So when you're coming in with your glitter, just kind of bear in mind any areas that you don't want to cover up, and then just add in this layer of glitter. Once this has been top coated, it really just added to the look. Again, I have found that for me personally, I've really loved the watercolor paints and look for a base for my nail art. So coming in and layering, I love layered nail art designs. So adding in the watercolors to your layers It's just a really pretty way to take your nail art to the next level. Another thing that I really want to try is similar to how we did the watercolor underneath the stamping on that first nail, is doing it underneath some of the Kiki London decals, because I just think again it will look really, really pretty having a background to some of the black water decals. So once we had applied the glitter to both the nails, I'm going to come back in with my no wipe Hema free top coat and just seal everything in and bring all that glossiness back to life. Then we're going to pop this in to cure for 60 seconds, and then that is all of our nail art done. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of the new watercolor brushes. Are these something that you are going to purchase? Have you played around with watercolor before? Let's just talk watercolor in the comments below. I definitely can't wait to play around and create some more designs. Of course, if there's anything you'd like to see done with the new brushes, let me know in the comments below. And as always, the link to the brushes and the Kiki London website will be in the description box below as well. So if you're wanting to check that out, the link will be there. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up, leave us a comment below, and hit that subscription button if you haven't already. And I shall hopefully see you all again in the next video. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Lots of love. Take care. Bye bye.